Call the meeting to order, please. If you will stand, let's pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we have Pastor Mike McDonald from Black Mountain United Methodist Church will lead us in invocation.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we acknowledge before you that you are sovereign over this world. We know that justice and compassion are your will in every time and every place. We lift up our town leaders that you will guide them in their decisions for the benefit of all. Give them wisdom and compassion. Give them hearts of service. We humbly ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, I've got just a few announcements. Number one announcement that I want to make is everyone needs to remain quiet while you're in the audience. Don't be disturbing your neighbor to where they can't hear what's going on. Second, I'd like to congratulate Larry Harris for being elected the chair of the Land of the Sky for the second time. To me and the rest of this board, we're proud that he has been willing to represent Black Mountain at the Land of the Sky and also be the chair of their board over there, and that's quite an honor, and we appreciate him for that. He is also, the second time, he is being on the audit committee. He was the chair of the audit committee for Buncombe County, and he's been selected to be on there for the second go-around this year also. And with that, we have some proclamations, awards, and the first one, Maggie would like to tell us about the 100th birthday for Mary Frances Stevens, Sissy.
Yes, it was my honor yesterday to present the proclamation to Mary Frances. I call her Sissy. Those of us who know her and her family, they call her Sissy. Delivered it to her at the bistro. They had she calls them the clan, and her friends yesterday, and it was quite an event and quite a lady. And I'm going to steal Carlos's quote for a living treasure, and she surely is. She just think she was born in 1919 and in Burnsville, went by way of Marion and came to Black Mountain in 1948. So she's been, believe me, she's been quite a member of this community for all that many years.
Is this the lady who lives on U Street?
Yes, yeah. You know her?
Neighbor, yeah.
I know you.
Yep.
So if you know her, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it was a wonderful day, and I was very happy to present the proclamation as a member of this board and also as a friend. And one other thing that came to my attention, while I have your attention, and I've seen this magazine several different times. I've read it, but what really caught my attention this time is there's an article on Black Mountain, and it's called Black Mountain Meandering. History hides around its inviting hills, and it's Blue Ridge motorcycling. Now, I am not a motorcyclist, I can tell you that, but I think I can appreciate a really good quality magazine. And how I came to my attention to this was by way of one of our former aldermen, E.V. Gooch. His son, Michael, is the editor of this magazine. And I also would like to tell you that something that I really enjoy, Susan Reinhardt who used to write for the Asheville paper. She writes for this magazine along with John Boyle. So believe me, if you get a chance, pick it up. You can pick it up at Ingles. I think it just comes out about every 3 months. But it's really a great magazine. But I thought I'd bring your attention, especially since Black Mountain's featured this month. And Evie has assured me that you don't have to be riding a motorcycle to go along the trails they're talking about.
Thank you, Maggie. We also have a proclamation for the Tick-Borne Diseases Awareness Month. Whereas tick-borne diseases such as Lyme disease can be a very serious infection caused by bacteria, and scientists have identified more strains and species of this bacteria in the southeastern United States than in any other region. And whereas ticks, the vector of Lyme disease, are carried by many different animals, and therefore ticks are frequently encountered by people who live in Black Mountain. And whereas the ticks can be the size of poppy seed and are also hard to detect by people who are infected with Lyme disease, a lot of those do not even remember being bitten by a tick. It can affect your brain, heart, joints, and other organs, and some patients do not develop the characteristic rash, and symptoms may not appear for months or even years following the initial infection. Citizens should know that the testing for tick-borne diseases such as Lyme disease may be inaccurate, and over a dozen tick-borne diseases in the southeastern United States. Everyone is encouraged to take up all tick bites seriously. Now, I, therefore, Don Collins, Mayor of the Town of Black Mountain, here proclaim May 29th as Tick-Borne, May 2019 as Tick-Borne Disease Awareness Month. All righty, we have a list of citizen comments. Alrighty, we've got several folks that have listed to talk about one topic. On the tennis, for example, I'd like to have just one person, if you would, assign someone to give us those citizen comments, and I'll allow you 5 minutes for that instead of the 3 minutes per person. So, with that, the first is Ruth Hubbard Lovinson. All righty.
My name is Ruth Hubbard Lovinson. I reside at 58 Hutchins Road since 1983 in the town of Black Mountain. Not within the town limits, but it's considered Black Mountain. It used to be called 115 Hutchins Road and way back Tabernacle Road. I have two comments and questions. One is, and they're both about water and water quality and water service in this town. It's the first time I've actually attended a meeting. I was invited by Diana McCall. I don't know if she's shown up from the community garden, but having watched many DVDs over the years, I understand the town is buying or has already bought out water service on Cragmont Road, which is just across the field from me. I'm on City of Asheville water still, so I would like to know if the town is planning to also purchase accounts on the road I live on, Hutchins. The other is water quality. I am a volunteer at the community garden, the Dr. John Wilson, now called Veterans Park, community garden. And without clean water, none of us can survive, period. Plants may grow, but they would not be healthy to eat. So my concern is Bud Hall's Towing and Recovery, which is just a few doors down from the garden, and they have hundreds. It's a vehicle graveyard there, and it's a terrible chore that they are faced with to handle the motor oil, the gasoline, the antifreeze, the refrigerant in each and every one of those vehicles that is towed there and dropped off. I certainly would not want to have to do that. I mean, it's a difficult chore. So I would hope that the town has some incentives for businesses like them, perhaps even grant money to help businesses like that cope, and make sure their workers are protected so they're not coming down with cancer just, when they drain, contain, hopefully recycle, reuse, and if need be, safely transport and dispose of the hazardous materials. That's all.
Thank you. All right, Chris Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Chris Castro. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the North Carolina Army National Guard, and I'm going to address my presentation to members of the community as well. I'm what they call a traditional guardsman. I drill 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summertime. And we have a partnership in North Carolina with the Selective Service System out of Washington, D.C., and that's my job. So the Selective Service System, as you're probably well aware of, is the draft. Currently, there is no plans that I know of to reinstate a draft, but the Selective Service System has a mechanism in place just in case a draft ever were to be reinstated. So what they do is, in each community, really in every state, but most counties have a 5-person local board. They call it the local draft board. It's comprised of citizen volunteers. Anybody that wants to volunteer from that is welcome. These 5 persons on this local board, what they do is if a draft ever were to be reinstated, these 5 people would make a decision about members of the community of whether those folks would receive a deferment, a postponement, or even an exemption from military service. So it's an important role. It's in mothballs currently because we have no draft, but Buncombe County has a 5-person local board, and my job is to recruit people to staff those positions. I currently have 2 vacancies in Buncombe County, so I'm here tonight to ask the board just to give you a little information about what I do in the local boards. I have some information booklets that I'll hand out, if I may. And I'm here to ask for some assistance if you know anybody that might be interested, and this certainly goes to members of the community here tonight as well. If you know anybody that might be interested in filling a position on the local board, I have 2 vacancies. I'd love to have a volunteer. The requirements typically or essentially are you have to be 18 years of age, you cannot be in law enforcement, and you cannot be in a prosecutorial role with the local government. Other than that, anybody's welcome to apply. We certainly encourage a diverse makeup of that local board on those 2 positions that I have open. And the other great thing about the position is you're appointed by the governor of the state of North Carolina. You get a nice certificate. And the great thing about it is currently, because there is no draft, you don't really have any job to do. So that's the greatest thing. You get appointed, you get a nice certificate, and really no role to fulfill. I will email you a PowerPoint presentation, and that kind of has the duties of what it entails to be a board member. But other than that, there is no job requirement. And, of course, no pay, but it's volunteer. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the board or Mr. Mayor you might have regarding local boards, and if not, I'd like to, if I may approach, I could leave these brochures, and I'd also like to leave with Madam Clerk some of my business cards. It has my email address, my telephone number. If anybody is interested, please feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'd love to tell you more about it, and I'd love to try to get those vacancies filled. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Peter Davies. Dawes, okay.
You have terrible acoustics in this place. I barely hear anything you're discussing. Yeah, my name's Peter Dawes. I hope you have the sound on. 49 Sunset. I'd like for you in this moment, we have a lot of discourse in America right now. Little civility about everything. I happen to be on Saturday. I happen to have a problem set up aside from Black Mountain on my property. They dug a trench, and anyway, 2 of my neighbors came down and decided to change the tar in my front yard. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be called an effing Yankee, a-hole by anybody, especially my neighbors, supposedly. We've reached a point in America where civility has gone by the board. I called the police department. The police department came over, and the altercation had passed. The guys had split when they realized I called the police. And the policeman said, "You're a nice man." No objection to him. He said, "If that's the worst thing you've got to be called, it ain't too bad, is it?" That is BS. You stand a flag over there, and we all pledge allegiance to it, and if some part of it is Yankee, is there another flag that says Southern something over there? I'm not Yankee. I'm a registered. Here we go. I came here on my own, chosen because I think it's a great country. And we've gone downhill fast. Fast. And it's getting worse. Incivility, rudeness, crude. We have somebody who's the head of this government who I wouldn't cross the road. Anyway, that's another story. But I mean, where have we gone? And just as you can't call somebody an N-word, you can't call somebody a Yankee and think they're inferior because they came here. I pay my taxes, I do my best. Why should I be subject to verbal abuse by anybody who thinks that the South lost, has a chip on their shoulder? This is unbelievable. Can you make a proclamation? Bullying and hatred needs to stop. Just pass it amongst yourselves. You need to put it out, each one of you. All these proclamations you make, bullying. I mean, I felt intimidated. Two people, and one of them happened to be on the. One of them said he was on the board of the zoning commission. Think about it. It's a great country. Don't lose it.
Thank you. All righty. Tennis courts, if y'all have someone that you want to come speak.
Thank you. Honorable Board of Aldermen of the town of Black Mountain. I'm Bevy Walker, and I serve as the Western North Carolina Local League Coordinator for the USTA Leagues. And the Black Mountain Tennis Association asked me if I would come and just briefly tell you a little bit about the economic impact of USTA Leagues, because they are talking to you about the tennis courts at Lake Tomahawk. So I have actually done a letter I'll give to each one of you with some of the information, because I don't want to take your time, and I know there is a time limit, and I appreciate your taking the time to listen to me. Our current league system serves players competing in the counties of Buncombe, Henderson, Transylvania, Polk, and Rutherford counties. Our tennis players compete at local public facilities and private clubs all over this area. At present, we have approximately 1,800 active tennis players in the greater Western North Carolina area. Tennis players are fanatics with a deep sense of community, accompanied by a strong desire to share their passion for the game with others. CTAs, which is a community tennis association, like the Black Mountain Tennis Association, are nonprofit organizations filled with volunteers who thrive on increasing participation and promotion of tennis. A booming tennis community benefits everyone in the area. When a Parks and Recreation Department has successful programs for adults and children, such as leagues, tournaments, and clinics, the community benefits in ways that go well outside the lines of the tennis court. For instance, after tennis matches, lessons, clinics, or tournaments, tennis players eat at local restaurants, shop at nearby stores, and if tennis is a weekend event, may book hotel rooms in the area. A thriving community calendar brings an economic impact to your entire city. I was just here last weekend and played tennis at the Zimmermont courts on a team, and then afterwards I went and ate at a lovely restaurant downtown, and then I bought some gifts in some of the downtown shops. That directly affects your tax base. The benefits of USTA League Play and Black Mountain tennis programs are revenue for your facility, player user fees, UST gratuity fees for the court use. Youth and adult tennis programs benefit kids and adults in several ways: personal work ethic, discipline, managing adversity and stress, sportsmanship, teamwork, social skills, muscle and bone strength, flexibility, eye-hand coordination, aerobic and anaerobic fitness. Adult and youth tennis programs offer the benefit of increased social contacts, friendships with others from different cultural, religious, or community areas, and planned activities combat boredom and depression. The USTA offers several types of grants to help Community Tennis Association and Parks and Recreation departments to improve and or build new facilities and to provide equipment for tennis programs. So I have attached to my letter a copy of the grant sheet available through the USTA, through the North Carolina, the Southern, and the national programs for your information. And just also, the Black Mountain Tennis Association has provided a calendar of what they do for the youth and the adults in Black Mountain for your information. So if you would be so kind, I would like to give these to each one of you. And I appreciate your taking the time to hear me a minute. And I hope that you will consider an improvement of the Lake Tomahawk Park courts or new courts. And the Black Mountain Tennis Association is ready, willing, and able to work with you. And it will be great for everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you.
I'm just going to hand it to you, and just a copy for each one, because one and pass it down. And here's the information on their programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Miss Lynn Swan?
Hello, my name is Lynn Swan, and I live at 101 South Park Lane. I am a member of the Lakeview Senior Center Advisory Council, and we discovered today that someone made the decision that summer camp for the youth this summer is to be held downstairs at the Lakeview Senior Center from June the 17th to July the 29th or something like that. June the 17th to July 26th. During the hours of 8:30 to 5:30, there will be no senior activities downstairs during this time. Our activities director at the center was not able to share with us who had made the decision or why the decision was made for it to be at the senior center. I questioned why couldn't it have been at Gray Eagle, or why couldn't it have been at the massive building we've got for Public Works. It's just, I don't know, it's just not convenient at all to be at the Lakeview Senior Center when summer parking is already an issue with pool use, lake use, the seniors coming and going, and then now there's going to be this issue with you can't go downstairs because the children might be down there. So I just want to say it seems like the clubhouse itself should be considered a profit center since it's rented frequently and the town gets money from those rentals, and it needs new windows. We lost the budget last year for the windows. The deck needs painting. There needs to be a lot of attention done to the clubhouse, and I just wanted to ask you folks to tell me what you're going to do next year. I mean, surely you're not expecting this to go on year after year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
I've signed up to speak to that issue as well. Could I have just a minute?
Yes, sir. And your name?
Jim Schneider at 210 9th Street.
Okay, Jim.
It's hard for me to come up here and admit that I'm a senior citizen, but I am. And in the last 2 years, I've gotten involved down at the Senior Center. I'm also on the committee that she mentioned, Lakeview Senior Center Advisory Council. Senior citizens 60 and over can get easily confused. And this is going to disrupt a lot of people who have finally gotten to know where they should be on a certain day. And I just fear for the confusion that's going to come. And as Lynn said, we just heard about it today. What do we got? 2 months to consider this. We want to be sure that A, we hear about it beforehand, and B, that the senior center remains for the seniors. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Elaine Lutzenheimer.
Sorry. Your buddy didn't get me. No, I'll just take it off for a few minutes. Maybe I won't die like a breath. Elaine Lotzenheiser, 410 Avena Road. Last month I spoke to you about the condition of Pagettown Road. At the time, our planning director knew that we already had a 43-unit housing development going in between Pagettown and Avena Road. It's being made by modular units that weigh a ton. It takes a crane to lift them off of the trailers that they come into the area with. He obviously can't put that many at one time, so our road is going to suffer the 2 years that he anticipates putting those down. I asked Josh how we get impact fees, and he said it has to begin with you all. I'm appealing to you that if we're going to have Sweet Birch on Blue Ridge Road, the Tudor thing that's up there where it is, and now 43 units in a small space, he was arrogant enough to say he could have put twice that many, but I don't know where he'd put them if you've looked at the map of where he's putting them. But I feel that you all ought to be charging some of these developers that are coming into our town, and they're costing the town. We taxpayers are not getting that much for our money. I've paid taxes for 30 years, and I've yet to see any pavement done to the improvement of my roads. Please think about impact fees. It's something we don't have, but it's something we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, I've got 3 names here. They did not write down what topic. Denise Tony.
Oh, I probably signed in the wrong place. It was for tennis.
Okay, so that we're done there. Karen Keever.
I copied her.
Okay. Nicole Shoemate.
Pass.
Okay. And Lisa, I'm assuming you'll want to speak second citizen comments. Lisa Milton.
At the routine.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Okay. All right. Unless I'm missing someone, that's all of our citizen comments. All right. Communications from boards, commissions, and agencies. If we will, I'm going to switch these around. I'm going to have Cherry come up first from the Recreation Commission to give her annual report.
All right, well, first of all, I think I'm going to welcome you to Parks and Recreation Night because I see 9 items on the
the agenda tonight dealing with recreational events, parks, greenways, including the parades and things like that. And then we've also already mentioned, I think, 5 others just prior to my coming up here to speak. So it must be Parks and Recreation night tonight. We're going to take a slightly different course for our annual report this year. It seems like each year since the department's report has been put on the same day as the commission report, it seems like we tend to repeat each other a lot. So I'm going to move us forward to the future, if I can, and just talk a little bit about our master plan. We do have a master plan. It was originally developed in the late 1990s. I think it was first signed off on by your board in 2004. It goes through periodic updates by the commission. During that update, it's evaluated, it's reviewed, it's adjusted, and changes are made as needed as new things are built or things within the community, recreational, non-public recreational things are happening in the community, that part of the plan is adjusted. So the last one was approved by you in December 2017. Just a brief overview. The purpose of a plan is to identify quality recreational facilities and programs that will enhance the well-being of the public, identify and protection of open spaces, environmentally sensitive areas, promotion of social interaction among diverse individuals, groups, and generations, and enhance the ability to attract new businesses. I think the tennis folks just mentioned what the economic impact can be of having a tennis event in town. There's a lot of events that Parks and Recreation can do that also benefit the town. If there's a weekend event, races, that type of thing. Also, 50% of Fortune 500 say that they use the town's recreational potential as one of the factors in determining where they locate new businesses. The plan, as you know, was developed by evaluating the existing recreational programs and spaces, including what's offered by the private sector, evaluation of current trends, and citizen input through public meetings, social media polls, and questionnaires. The latest public polls were taken in 2017. In the latest polls, what our citizens said they desired was special events related to performing arts, parks for outdoor activities, including walking, hiking trails, etc., aquatic facilities for pleasure, exercise, and aerobics, and a facility for social activities such as meals, senior activities, bridge, clubs, teen events, dances, etc. And one of the important things that I left out there, and I'll tell you, I was watching the Baylor-Notre game last night, the ending of this as I was writing this, and I missed this one, but that's courts. We also need a facility that has courts. Courts for indoor tennis, courts for pickleball, courts for volleyball, courts for basketball, for indoor play. We have a travel volleyball team in Black Mountain this year. It's the first time it's been a Black Mountain centered travel team. They've had to travel throughout the state for their tournaments. It would be really nice if we had a couple of indoor courts so that we could host a tournament ourselves. And I mentioned pickleball. You know, when we wrote this plan originally, pickleball wasn't even on the radar. And within the last couple of years, pickleball has blossomed big time here in Black Mountain. And I think you heard about that during your last meeting. The recommendations of the plan is to secure a recreation center. And per the National Recreation and Parks Association, a multi-purpose recreational center includes an indoor pool, indoor courts for basketball, volleyball, pickleball, tennis, classrooms and activity rooms. And as you just heard, if we had more rooms to put those kids in this summer, that would be a fantastic thing. Meeting space, such as a small auditorium or theater. I know I've seen this room fill up to beyond capacity before, so it would be good if we had a larger space in which we could meet if we needed to. The standard per the NRPA, National Recreation and Parks Association, is that there should be one multi-purpose recreational center for each 10,000 in population in a town. I'm not sure what our population is right now, but I'm sure we're getting close, especially as we expand with all the new developments. I just want to thank you for your attention, for your help with providing recreational and parks programs in the city. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
All right, Terry, thank you. Next will be Josh.
All right. Like Don mentioned, if I haven't got a chance to meet you, I'm Josh. I'm the Recreation Director. Just want to preface this presentation. As the board is aware, I started in September. We had a huge turnover, so most of this presentation will consist of numbers from September to January for 2018. I will hit on two things that kind of took place before I got here, just to give you a little bit of information. The board has a more concise handout. I'm just going to kind of hit the highs and lows here. The first being the pool. You can see the numbers there with the total attendance and things. We did do some restructuring with the pool this year and the fee schedule. We do run activities such as swim team, lap swim. We do aerobic classes, and you can see those things there with the participants and the attendance there. Just threw some of the revenues up for you from the pool from last summer. Again, the projected revenue this year will probably be a little bit higher, considering that we did raise some of the rates earlier in the year. I also want to talk a little bit about the community garden. So we have 85 gardeners this year, which, looking at the numbers I was given from our community garden coordinator, I think that's the largest number we've had since this community garden kind of became a thing around 2012. You can see there are a lot of volunteers are involved in this process. One of the biggest things they do is produce food for donation with the partnership with Bonnie and Soul, and you can see the numbers there. They're pretty good for that. We also have plots that are grown specifically for donation purposes. There's a fundraiser that they host. They also have an internship program that takes place there as well. Kind of moving forward with our senior programming, again, these are numbers from September to current. The numbers of activities they host per week, you can see those there. They do exercise classes, card games. They have a lot of different things going on there, in addition to the mill site that they host on a daily basis. You can see out there they do have some upcoming programs and things happening this year. One of our biggest things we do in our department is our youth sports program. It is pretty easy to say that our most popular youth sport is indoor soccer, and soccer is kind of growing in this area in general if you follow the trends. You can see the numbers there. We did run a flag football program this year, and in the midst of the turnover before I got here, that program was kind of dropped. So we took what we had, we ran it with what we had. Typically we partner with a church in Asheville as part of their league, but because things got kind of tied up, that's where we ended up. Smart Start Soccer, indoor soccer, you can see those are two of our biggest programs. We do run a Smart Start Soccer program in the fall and the spring, and it is always full, and that is done in partnership with Warren Wilson and Montreat. We bring in some of their players to help us conduct skills clinics, essentially for kids ages 3 to 5. We did it at basketball this year, and kind of going off a little bit about what Terry said, with our basketball program, we have adult basketball and we have youth basketball, and currently we play those at the elementary schools, the middle school. We also do basketball in conjunction with Asheville Parks and Rec, so we do play some games there as well. We have a Smart Start basketball program, and you can even see the youth tennis numbers. Around 50 to 70 kids are playing tennis. Moving on to adult sports, again, we don't have as many adult sports offerings just because it's kind of hard to put together those things with adult schedules and whatnot. Most of those games have to be played in the evenings or on the weekends. As you can imagine, a lot of Parks and Rec departments will have adult softball, but that is kind of a beast of its own if you've ever played or gotten involved in that. There's just a lot of things to tackle there. But you can see what we do offer, and again, tennis is one of our biggest adult sports. Pickleball, they're averaging about 24 players a day, and they do that at Cragmont Assembly. Right now they're playing 5 days a week there. In the off-season, in the summertime, they play at Owen Middle School. And we also have adult basketball going on until the end of this month. We did have some events back in the fall. When I got here, we had the walk to school day. We did have a little bit of showing there. Again, that was right around the Hurricane Florence deal. Our mini monster Circle of Lights was not able to take off just due to the snow and ice storm that hit. And I did throw in our 2019 Valentine's numbers because they were higher than last year. Just looking at some of our revenue generating things aside from the pool and the community garden and our youth sports, we also do rentals. You can kind of see the numbers there, just what was rented during that time frame and what kind of money we brought in on those things. Probably, aside from the Lakeview Center being rented out on the weekends for parties, weddings, and such, Gray Eagle is probably our most used facility. There is somebody in there every day. Whether that is Monterey or Warren Wilson using it for their sports practices taking place indoor, whether that's our soccer practices or bounce house parties, Nerf parties, those sort of things. This is probably our heaviest used facility that we have. And you can kind of just see those are some of the rental numbers. I didn't include the numbers from other entities using that building, but it is used every day. Moving along here, just some of the highlights of what's taken place since I've kind of gotten here. One of the things we came into, we updated our rental policies. When I got here, we had just went through Hurricane Florence. We had a flood in one of our facilities. We had a lot of rentals that were scheduled and needed to be canceled or rescheduled. We had nothing in our policy for that, so we got that language in there, cleaned that up. We also implemented for the first time a recreation on-call phone. In the past, if there was an issue on the weekend with a rental, Public Works was called for a recreation problem. So we came in and said, hey, we're going to do this, and we implemented that, and it's going pretty well. We also increased the pool rates, like I said, for the first time since 2015. Few events coming up. We do have Black Mountain Summer Camp starting in June. We will be hosting our sports camps in conjunction with those, our pool season, park rhythms, and a lot of our summer events coming up as well. Any questions from you guys?
Not so much a question, Josh, but if there's two areas of town that really concern me and always been sticking points for me, has been public safety for one, and recreation for two. Mainly because for a long time I was a basketball coach for the Little League guys in town. And also for a long time I served on the Recreation Commission. And I know last year there was a lot of concerns because of the things that happened in the previous, what I'll call administration. And there was a lot of doubting Thomases, if that's a nice way to put it. And a lot of people who had concerns that there was a lot of lost programs or a lot of lost activities or a lot of lost participants. In your view, since you've come on board, where do you see the department right now?
Well, to kind of answer your question about, or to kind of expand upon the loss, we haven't taken away anything that we previously offered. So my vision when I got here and took over was to basically get a full year under our belt as a team, as a staff, which first of all was to hire a staff. That's something else I had to do when I got here. We had some transition changes to get a team in place, to get a full year under our belt, and then to sit back and assess. Okay, here are the events that they've done. Here's how they went for us. One of the things that we are doing is we are soliciting feedback through surveys. You can go on SurveyMonkey. We send out surveys post-event, surveys for all of our youth sports, and those types of things. And we want your feedback, because what we want to do is sit down at the end of this season and say, hey, look, here's the feedback we've gotten. Here's what we've been doing. How can we improve on this? And this is what people want, and this is what they're saying. So that's to kind of answer your question. That's what we're doing to kind of combat some of that. I don't think the numbers have been down in our participation. I know 5K was up. Youth sports was about where it has been. And with the few events that have taken place, I haven't seen much of a drop-off compared to looking at the annual report from last year that was done compared to where we are now, I would say it's about in the same place.
You remember back, I believe it was the first or second week that you arrived, we had a talk. And I told you then that I would be monitoring the program, that I would be asking questions, and I would be talking to you to make sure everything was on the up and up.
Sure.
And I will tell to the citizens of this town right now, the department's on the up and up. They are making great strides. They're doing good things in Parks and Recreation. We ought to be proud of them. For you to come in and do the job that you've done at a traumatic time as it was, you and your staff deserve a pat on the back.
I appreciate
I'm very impressed with what you've done so far. Speaking to one of the things that Terry brought up about the indoor courts, I know for a long time we utilized the local schools and different facilities like the Presbyterian home, especially for basketball. In light of some of the programs that she made note of, are we utilizing those facilities still?
The facilities that we utilize this year, and I'll probably butcher this. It is either the primary or the elementary school. I haven't yet got those two down as to which one is which. We use one of their gyms, so we use the elementary for our league play, and then I think we use the primary for our Start Smart basketball. We also use Owen Middle School for adult play and for youth basketball as well. But aside from that, as far as outside of town of Black Mountain recreation facilities, those are the only ones that we use as a third party.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And that's a rental.
It is a rental. Yeah, we pay Buncombe County Schools to use those facilities.
Well, Josh, while you're up, do you care to speak to the comment about summer camps and so forth?
Sure. So we looked at summer camp myself. I talked to the town manager. I talked to Melinda, who runs the senior center. And with the absence of the Carver Center and trying to kind of figure out what we were going to do with summer camp this year, we're taking a new approach. We're kind of just restructuring things and just seeing what works. In my mind, my vision, and talking with Melinda, she kind of even seconded this, was what better place to have the kids than by the lake, by the tennis courts, by the playground, by the pool, in a centralized location. Now, it does offset some of the senior activities for 6 weeks, but we reduced the number of campers we're taking per week. So we're taking 13 campers, and we're only going to be there for 6 weeks. So, I kind of went to Melinda first, and I said, hey, here's an idea. What do you think about this? Do you think this will work? And, she even came to me and said, hey, I think some people will be a little upset, but I think we can get through it. And it's one of those things where we will assess at the end of the summer, did this work? And if it didn't, we'll go back to the drawing board and figure something else out with that. But that was kind of the idea behind it. It wasn't to kind of push them out. And we're even going to be moving some of their activities upstairs that were previously taking place downstairs.
Now, some of those activities that are downstairs, could they be moved over to the main building?
I don't believe so.
Not in that big space we have over there?
I don't believe so.
What's the advisory committee for if she didn't bring it to us first?
I don't have the answer to that. Is that it?
That's it. So I just want to just make some statements on the recreation and what we do here in the town of Black Mountain. Our budget is just a few thousand, about $5,000 less than $500,000 in this town. When you compare that to towns all over western North Carolina, we by far exceed any town our size. Brevard, for example, there's about 600 population difference. Their total budget for recreation is $102,000. That's about 20% of what ours is. You go into other towns in Buncombe, Weaverville, their total is $143,000. Woodfin is $50,000. I could go on and on, but one of the things that I'm proud of in this town is that we do put a lot of emphasis on recreation and town facilities, and we're not lacking in any way when you compare our numbers to anybody else's numbers in western North Carolina. All right, That's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, consent agenda. Josh?
All right, item A is adoption of minutes. This will be the March 7th, 2019 agenda session, March 11th, 2019 regular session, March 11th, 2019 closed session, and March 20th, 2019 special called meeting. Item B would be a call for public hearing to close a platted street known as Campbell Street. This is a section, a small portion of Campbell Street that the applicants are requesting it be petitioned to be closed. I think you've got a map in your packet. They are wanting to make use of this unopened portion of Campbell Street as their own, so they'd like to have it closed. Item C is with that. That's the remainder of Campbell Street that the planning board is requesting to be closed, so you don't have a closed portion and then an open portion to the south of it. So it just makes sense to close the rest of Campbell Street. Item D is a call for public hearing for Christmas Parade. This is for an ordinance to close State Street for our Christmas Parade. I think in the past we've done this a little differently. NCDOT has been, I think, kind of bombarded with a lot of street closures just throughout the state, and they've requested that jurisdictions kind of go about it a little bit differently. So we've got an ordinance in your packet for the adoption for the closure of State Street for the Christmas Parade. And that's a call for public hearing. Item E would be the same thing, except it's for the Veterans Day Parade. Item F is a contract for JLS paving for Flat Creek Greenway. This is to get that project finished on Flat Creek Greenway, to get the paving down. Since the asphalt plants are now open, the total cost for that is $19,980 to do that 120 linear foot section of Greenway. Item G is a contract for Civil Design Concepts. This is for the water transfer agreement or water purchase agreement with the City of Asheville. This is for phase 2 of that, to do the engineering for that. This will be for plans, for submission to Diener, for the construction oversight and all that for phase 2 for that. And that's $29,250 for that contract. Item H is a resolution in support of passenger rail in Western North Carolina. This is to show our support for Amtrak Thruway bus service to provide it's not really passenger rail, it'll be bus service at this point from Salisbury to Asheville. According to the resolution we were provided, there was passenger rail service in 1975 that ran from Asheville to Salisbury. I wasn't aware of that, but that's what the resolution says. And item I is this is a system development fee study. The North Carolina legislature has passed some legislation where cities and towns, in order to charge impact fees for water and or sewer service, you must now undertake a fee study. So what you've got in your packet is a proposal from McGill Associates for $8,900. We did get a couple more quotes from some other consulting firms. I would say this is definitely the cheapest, and McGill is qualified to provide us with the service. So staff would recommend that the board would go with McGill for this study, and that'll be your consent agenda.
Do I have a motion to approve consent items A through I?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right. Citizen comments for unfinished and new business. Okay. Public hearing for text amendments to the graffiti ordinance. Ron, if you'll update us on that.
Last month, the board looked at a proposed graffiti ordinance, and some questions were raised at items to address. As that ordinance came to you, it had an addition last time based on a recommendation by Alderman Harris. And based on the MLO model graffiti ordinance, that any fines coming in be pooled and used to clean up graffiti. The language last month I had was for a trust fund. That could be burdensome for Dean to run a trust fund. We're hoping that the ordinance will scare people out of making messes and we won't collect any fines. However, I reworded that so if we do bring in some fines, there'd simply be accounting for it and use that money to clean up graffiti on public and possibly private properties. And once it reaches $10,000, should that happen, then it would become a trust fund. A second question that was raised, I think, by Lisa Milton was, what's a violation? And I've defined violation. I had no guidance, so I made this up. I've basically stated that each time you place graffiti on a building or an object, that's a violation. However, if it's an object where I do one wall on your house and I turn the corner and I do another, that's 2 violations. If I paint up your house and then your car, that's a double violation. Just so that every brush stroke isn't a violation, but doing your whole house isn't a single violation. Just trying to broaden that a little. And those were the changes I made from last month. Any questions for me about that?
Anybody? I need a motion to reconvene the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. All right, any discussion with the board members?
I think we discussed this a little bit last month when we spoke about this. I still have some reservations, and I know we kind of got this a draft resolution, and we looked at it, worked on it, adopted it, changed it, all that sort of thing. But I still have some reservations about. If I'm the property owner, and there's a violation, and the first step required by the ordinance is that the perpetrator go clean it up. I mean, I like the thought of that, but if I were the property owner, I might have some discomfort with that.
I think what we did on that part is there was a forgiveness. If you came back, cleaned up the mess you made, that there was some leniency. That's been removed. You're right. There is. Mm-hmm. I did take out the part where so there's no obligation on the property owner's part to allow them back on, so they'd be forgiven for their violation.
Now, I'm sorry. I guess I missed that in looking at the.
I didn't completely remove the ability of the perpetrator to come back and clean it up, and there may be a property owner who's willing to do that. But the only thing, the tool in the ordinance is, as it was written before, is it provided that if I come and paint up your house, and then if I come back and clean it up, I get some partial forgiveness for my violation. And that was, at least discussion last month, was sort of putting the burden on the property owner to let the perpetrator back on his property. And we've taken out that forgiveness provision, so there's no encouragement for the property owner to let them back on the property. I can't make them let them, but I can't prohibit them either, but we took away the incentive.
Right. Great. Thank you, Ron.
Any citizen comments?
Thank you. I'm Lisa Milton, 406 West State Street. I do have a question about it's section 373, removal required, and it goes to what Larry has talked about, and it goes to where I was at the last meeting. It's immediate removal. It says it is the responsibility of the perpetrator to immediately remove any graffiti created or caused by the perpetrator. To me, that language says that it is okay for them to come back and remove it. I think a property owner should be notified first before that. If you want to leave that language in the code, I think that it should be the property owner's right to determine whether they wanted the person back on their property or whether they wanted to deal with the process themselves. As I addressed last time, depending on what someone does to remove the graffiti, they can create even more damage to the property that they've already damaged. So those were my reservations in addition to allowing someone who's already vandalized your property back on it again. So I don't know if there's a way of adequately addressing that, but I feel the property owner's rights are not well served with that statement in there. So hopefully we can come up with some language that gives the property owner the right to either permit or refuse access to their property again.
That would be easy enough to insert there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and just as a thought, I think the first line of that paragraph says, "It is the responsibility of the perpetrator to immediately remove any graffiti created or caused by the perpetrator." At that point, we could insert, if the property owner will allow the perpetrator to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Any further board discussion? All right, I need your motion to approve ordinance O19-5 as amended. Does that cover it, Ron?
You have to close.
Close.
Okay. Motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve the ordinance O19-05 as amended.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approves 5-0. New business, Asheville Design Center Master Plan for Veterans Park and Children and Friends Daycare, Chris and Tanya.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. My name is Chris Joyelle. Thank you. My name is Chris Joyelle. I'm the Executive Director of the Asheville Design Center. We were recruited to Veterans Park towards the end of 2017 when the John Wilson Community Garden contacted us, asking us if we would develop a master plan for their site. At around the same time, we were also contacted by the operators of the Children and Friends Enrichment Center, and they informed us that they had the potential to develop a new facility, potentially at Veterans Park, and asked if we would help in undertaking a feasibility study for that development. We recognized that those two projects had the potential to conflict with one another, but they also had the potential to complement one another very well if they were designed well. So we recruited a team of 2 architects, a landscape architect and a civil engineer. They volunteered their time with us to engage both the members of the community garden and the enrichment center, as well as the broader public, to develop a scheme of designs that we'll briefly cover today. I'm going to turn things over to Tanya McCamey, our project manager. She directed our team of volunteers, and she'll be able to walk you through some of the concepts that we were able to develop.
So good evening, Board of Aldermen. My name is Tanya McCamey. I am the project manager with the Asheville Design Center working on the Veterans Park project. So as Chris has mentioned, this project has 2 components, each of which we'll discuss tonight. The conceptual master plan for the John Wilson Community Garden and the potential relocation and siting of Children and Friends Daycare. First, to just get you acquainted, just what we're talking about, it's just Veterans Park South, right here. Does this have a pointer on it? No? Okay. So we're just looking at the southern part of Veterans Park, right below I-40 and off of Blue Ridge Road. Just a quick timeline of our process to show you how we got here. Again, as Chris mentioned, we kind of kicked this off around November of 2017, just wrapped up in December of last year. We held 5 main input and stakeholder meetings that helped to inform the design process throughout this project. So first, looking at the John Wilson Community Garden. This is a very vibrant and active community asset that you have here in Black Mountain. It is currently home to 82 gardeners, has numerous community partners, over 80 active volunteers that grow 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of fresh produce annually for donation to Bounty and Soul. So we were asked to develop a conceptual master plan for them, as they would like to both formalize their space, capitalizing on current features, while also thinking about the incorporation of an outdoor kitchen and gathering space for hosting events, classes, and community gatherings. So in thinking of that space, what the building could look like, our design team came up with some images. Something we're thinking kind of rustic, natural materials, kind of open air. This would also have secure areas that would lock at night for equipment and things of that nature. We thought about garden entrances to be located at multiple points throughout the space to create a sense of place. We looked at fencing and seating, again, to define the space and the seating. Just people could come and enjoy the space, enjoy being in the garden, being outside, kind of rest while they're gardening and doing their thing. So these, again, to be kind of natural elements that really flow with the space and sort of integrate into that natural feel. Looking at paving and signage, the paving again would serve just to kind of formalize the pathways and connectivity, also to address any erosion concerns, and the signage just to, provide garden information and some fun educational opportunities. Another really cool element could be a natural playscape for kids as they're down there with their families in the garden or at the greenway, disc golf course, again, just to create a sense of community and vibrancy where people can really just enjoy this park. And last, we have some suggestions of edible and pollinator plantings to be placed throughout the site. So looking here is the conceptual site design. I know this is a lot of detail, it's kind of hard to see, but sort of orients you to where we are. To the west would be, that's the entrance into the garden, coming down the hill with the Swananoa River on the right, the very west side of the slide. So to note here are the two, so there would be two proposed garden buildings. The first one, the picnic pavilion, sort of the precedent image that we showed. I wish this pointer worked. Right to the west, kind of the angled building there. So that would be the picnic pavilion. We really wanted to position this kind of at the top of the hill so it created more of an inclusive rather than an exclusive feel. This is really a community asset, not exclusive to the garden users, but, just a place for events and community gatherings, things of that nature. So it'd be kind of on top of the hill as you kind of enter into the garden space. There would also be a secondary building kind of right above that, to the right just a little bit, a garden building for kind of way station, office, equipment, supplies, that sort of thing. Just some neat elements to point out here. So we have a neat little river view patio right there adjacent, right to the left of the Swananoa River, where people could really take advantage of that really beautiful vantage point, have lunch, hang out, gather, that sort of thing. The playscape we talked about is in the lower left-hand corner. And the pollinator plantings kind of at the top of the slide would provide a sort of a little bit of a screen to the highway and also just be advantageous to the garden beds there themselves. We also have formalized some parking spots. So down there now I think it's about 2 kind of informal spaces, and now we have 5 spaces incorporated into this design. Here's just some detail of those buildings. The left is the picnic pavilion, an outdoor food prep area, kitchen to the top, and below 2 restrooms. The building to the right of that would be the secure storage area, office space for the garden. And the third one is making adaptive reuse of a storage shed currently on the site. These buildings in total would be a combined about 2,750 square feet. So the Children and Friends preschool component, Children and Friends has asked us to show the building footprint and required elements for a proposed daycare expansion that would serve 172 students. So here is the design team's desired concept. Again, to the bottom left of the image is where you come into the site. The white building is the Gray Eagle Rec Center. So kind of that outline rectangle you see right above that is the proposed building siding. That is a 10,000 square foot building. Also above that into the field, you'll see a purple hashed line. That would be a playground space of 17,000 square feet. This concept also shows 108 parking spaces, which kind of uses formalizing the infrastructure that exists, the gravel lots in front and behind Gray Eagle Rec Center, but also does expand that a bit into the site. Highlights of this site, why it was, or site plan, why it was our desired concept was it is the most compact development footprint, making use of the current infrastructure at the southern end of the site with the Gray Eagle Rec Center and the parking. It best minimizes impact to the greenway, the disc golf course, and the community garden. Again, it's the best use of existing infrastructure with that parking. And there's also no development within the floodplain or the utility easement, which are both constraints on this site.
Excuse me, if I can interrupt you. Yes. What happened to the fire department substation?
It's just in the
white building.
Yes, that's right. It is right adjacent to the Gray Eagle.
Okay, it's showing it as being one building. That's why I was asking that.
I think it is one building.
It is a single building. I thought they were separated. No. Excuse me. Ignorance.
Aerials are always interesting when you see that perspective.
So those are the highlights of this site plan. And then lastly, we just wanted to show you a combined image of what these two elements would look like together and how they relate to one another. So you see the garden conceptual plan, site plan on the top right, and then there is the darker gray building would be the new proposed daycare center, and that is the expansion of parking infrastructure, that pink, all that pink shape.
What about the parking for the people using the community garden and the new space that you're thinking about? I kind of where is that in the? Show me where that is again.
The parking for the garden?
Right.
Well, I mean, users could use what's there, right. But
there are 5 spaces down in the garden. Do you see that top rectangle up? Next to the garden beds, it's the farthest rectangle up in the design, right near the green. That is the, right to the left of that are 5 garden parking spaces.
But that's not sufficient.
Are there programmed to find that should be?
I don't think so.
Joanna?
It would be sufficient except for it would be sufficient in general, but for garden-related events,
and things like that. It wouldn't. So there would definitely be like during like large scale events or volunteer groups, which happen on a weekly basis. There would be some need. We always use the up top parking. So there's always a number of cars down below and then a number of cars up above. So it's necessary for like handicap accessibility and garbage to unload, but it's only providing for that use. We always need the up above parking too.
Yes. So the 5 spaces down at the garden are very helpful for people loading and unloading produce and things of that nature.
And that probably is sufficient for that, like when you pull down there and out next to the barn and so forth.
Correct.
We would expect overlap and shared use of parking amenities and things of that nature.
Yeah,
and it's 108.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Is there any kind of a estimated just ballpark cost given, on it?
Would you like to speak to this? We have not gotten into that.
I mean, leaving
level
obviously the
of concept.
daycare out, that's a different building and different project, but just the community garden portion.
That is really not my expertise, so I couldn't even give you an estimation.
We'll get that from our team though, in the final report. In the final report that we submit to y'all, we'll have at least estimates to give people a ballpark idea for fundraising purposes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just make one comment, the stove area, if you're going to put that in a building that's not secured or enclosed, you're going to have problems.
Right, we will take that into account. We do expect to secure and enclose those sorts of things.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next is an interlocal agreement. John Wilson, if you'll come discuss that with us.
Mr. Mayor, Ford. This interlocal agreement, Weaverville has agreed to pay up front for a new software program that we can use. The fire department will be able to use it. The police department will be able to use it as well. With this new program, it will allow us going into other fire response areas to have pre-plans for their buildings, as well as the ones coming in to mutual aid to us. It will allow them to have access to pre-plans for them. This program connects with our current fire reporting system. It also connects with the county GIS system. It also connects with the tax department, the permits department, so anytime a permit is pulled for a building, it will update us on that as well. Also, while we are responding to the calls, the updated notes about what is going on with the call that the call takers are taking to the 911 system, they upload those notes for us as well to give us a better heads up of what we're getting ready to walk into. It would also give us call history, so if we've had issues with violence or things at those locations, it'll flag that for us as well. Currently, they've agreed to, Weaverville's agreed to pay for this up front, and then all of the Buncombe County Fire Departments have agreed to join in with them and repay that, so we can all have access to it. The Asheville Fire Department currently uses that now and is very happy with that program as well. Right now, we are looking to do it for 6 months to start off with, and that is $911 and some change for that 6 months. And then if the county does not agree to pick up the tab for that, which they had promised us initially that they would, and with the change of leadership there, that was actually pulled out of the budget. So it would cost us about $1,825 a year. The current program that we're using now is about $1,500 a year, so it'd be a little more per year for that, but it would open up a whole lot of opportunities for us and a lot of safety information be available for us.
So you can drop the one and add the other, and it's about a $300 difference.
Yes, that is correct, sir.
So where does the software reside? And whose server is it on? Where is it? Is it in the cloud?
I'm not sure exactly. It should be in the cloud where all the fire departments would have access to that software program. We would all be assigned a user ID and password It also has a public section to it as well, if I'm understanding it correctly, where if you have a special needs child or if you have handicapped, bedridden patients, they can actually go in and add that, so we're aware of that as well. So, and that would allow all the departments coming in, so I would assume that it is in a cloud somewhere.
Any other questions?
And we, in the town board, when we have to approve it because it's an agreement with another municipality?
Correct. It's an interlocal agreement. Most of these departments are volunteer fire departments with the ability to contract. Black Mountain's fire department is a department of the town, so the town has to enter into the agreement.
So is this something, Ron, we need to vote on tonight?
It's something that's already up and ready to roll with this board will approve the interlocal agreement, as I understand it.
That is correct.
Do I have a motion to approve the interlocal agreement?
So,
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The capital project ordinance, the projects fund amendment for the Riverwalk Greenway. Dean, are you going to be discussing this with us?
Sure. So, this project, began back in late 2015, early 2016, and as we all know, it's to connect the Riverwalk from the Flat Creek Greenway over towards Pizza Hut, which now it's eventually going to get us all the way to the Oaks, is what we're thinking. The town is going to be paying 20% of this full cost, and we originally received $150,000 in preliminary funding. That money was all spent. Our portion of that was $30,000. This was back in 2016 mainly. Since that time, the project has gotten a little bit bigger, but we haven't really spent any funds. And part of what I was thinking was I was going to wait until everybody had signed on the dotted line and come to you guys with one project amendment for the entire project. I'm really unable to do that right now because we've started spending again on some engineering costs. If we pass this amendment, this project will be funded for $2,150,000. There is another $2.8 million that is pending that we suspect within a month or two we will have ready to go to add to this total cost for the entire project. But right now, because we've started spending on professional services with Baker, Michael Baker Company, I'm sorry, I have to really get the project budget caught up. So that's my purpose in coming to you today to approve the portion that we have been approved on already. It's actually a little over $2 million, and when you add that, to the first 150 that we received, that gets us to the $2,150,000. I'll probably be up in front of you again in about 2 months, adding $2.8 million to this project.
And just a reminder for the public, those are funds that the federal funds, aren't they, that flow through federal government to the state government?
Yes, exactly.
But we're responsible for 20%.
Yeah, we are responsible for 20%, and of the $5 million, our 20% would get close to be $1 million. Now we've been putting in $80,000 a year since 2016, and we also received some word from Buncombe County that they're going to contribute $400,000. So we're actually kind of ahead of the game on our 20% matches. But it's a fairly complicated budget entry, to be honest with you. And if the timing had been a little bit different by a couple months, I would have been coming to you just with one amendment to say this is going to get us all caught up on this project.
Now, are these funds the ones that are, do you have to, is there, you specify where they're being spent? In other words, are these funds for the portion of the greenway that goes from, from the hotel over to the Oaks, or do you not have to? We're really just getting the money.
At this point, it is for the approved project to Highway 9. And we are reconciling the project scope and the remainder. And that is a series of back and forth between DOT and federal highways. It's a slow process.
Right.
And that scope and money will all align in the next round of paperwork.
But we're not restricted on, we can work on what we want to work on with the entire project was what was funded, right? Well, actually, no, the last part funded was the Oaks part, wasn't it?
They added segments to it in the last funding. We're trying to take those out as we speak.
Okay.
So we're good, and we have made requests to Federal Highways to draw down the approval for all of our engineering costs, and we're just waiting for that thumbs up from Federal Highways.
Right.
So it's all moving, but just at the rate of Federal Highways.
But without getting out in the weeds too much, which it doesn't take long, I realize in this stuff, but we're just pulling the money in, and again, like Dean said, he'll come again shortly just to bring all of the already approved funds into our budget and so forth for plant, so you can just commence with the project. But again, at the end of the day, when it's all done, you can be working here, you can be working there. You're not restricted.
You're restricted by field, so you authorize your preliminary engineering, you authorize your right-of-way, and you authorize construction.
Right.
So you have to work within those constraints.
Right.
And Dean, how much money, you said we were doing 80,000. I know we've been planning on that as part of our town's commitment on that. How much will we have with this current budget coming up?
Well, we have contributed $240,000. We contributed $30,000 originally on the first 150, and then we've contributed another $240, even though really we haven't spent anything on this project until about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And then we just received our first of the 3 payments that Buncombe County is going to pay us earlier in the week, of $133,000,
which is a total of $400,000 they've committed to us, and that can go toward our
what's going to get to be about in effect that's almost going to be half of our 20% match.
Right.
Well, the other part that I think it might be important for the public to understand, assuming I understand it correctly, and you can help me if I don't, but that for budgetary purposes, if we have to slow down because we've moved quickly, we've spent what we could afford batch-wise, we can slow down if we need to, but we have to continue. You kind of have to continue moving forward with the project. But it's my understanding that the time frame, I think a concern of the public would be what sort of commitment are you making? Well, the commitment, you can kind of stretch the time frame a little bit. If we hit a recession or something in 2 years or whatever, you're not handcuffed as far as the timeline's concerned.
Prior to letting for construction, you have some flexibility.
Right.
You may receive some pressure from DOT to pick up the pace.
Right.
But you have some flexibility.
Right. When you let a contract, you need to make sure you got the money in place.
You've got 10 years to build.
Yep. 10 years to build, really.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have another $80,000 in the budget, which you guys will be seeing
coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
July 1st.
Well, we haven't. This is a reasonable place to put it because we're not that far off, and we're in budget time. And again, this is down the road a couple of 2 or 3 years. But as you're contemplating sidewalks on Blue Ridge Road and number 9, you start getting up into the budget number, total budget number for those projects that make these funds a little more realistic. because it's my understanding from the folks at the MPO that you're looking at sort of a $250,000 project because of the complexity and the cost of administering these funds. And so that's something that I've spoken to Josh about, but I think it's of interest that if we can get those sidewalks built on Blue Ridge Road when that time comes, and couple it with number 9, and in addition perhaps consider and evaluate the possibility of NCDOT administering, which takes the burden off of us in-house. That could be a pretty attractive alternative for us to take as far as accomplishing what we want to with sidewalks over in those areas. So I think the ask on that comes up maybe in January or so forth. So it gives, yeah. So I think something to keep in mind just for the longer range budget numbers on those projects, which we have to fund one way or the other. But if we can pay 20 cents on the dollar, that would be nice.
That would be helpful, yes. Yeah.
It would also be nice if you didn't have to administer it, if it could be done by NCDOT, which seems to, I know you have to pay them to do it too, but just part of the cost of the project. So anyway.
Anything else, Dean? Any questions? All right. I need a motion to approve the Riverwalk Greenway Capital Project Ordinance O-19-09.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approves 5-0. All right.
We need to approve item D as well, which goes along with that.
All right.
Item D is approved. Which is the actual budget amendment.
I need a motion to approve budget amendment FY 219-19 is submitted.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5-0. All right, we have a Hemphill property update. Mr. Sneed.
Okay, this, as you know, we've been working with what to do with the Hemphill property for a while now. Mary Hemphill, when she died in her will, she left what is known as the Sims property, which they bought from Riley Sims. Mary left that to the Southern Appalachian Conservancy on the condition that it be used as a park. The Conservancy is not in the park business, and their proposal is to turn this property over to the town with a reverter, obviously, that in the event we don't operate it as a park, then it kicks back to them and goes back to the estate of Mary Hemphill and gets sold. Ron Webster, the attorney for the estate of Mary Hemphill, has been spending a large part of this time looking at trying to solidify what he feels is a second access into the property. Most of the board knows that the present typical access to the Sims property is you turn off of US 70, go by Joe's two little houses, go through the box culvert, over the railroad tracks. I might have that in reverse order, and then to the Sims property. This is the same road that goes in to go to our water tank. And Brian Webster was trying to solidify the other easement, which comes off of Sunset Drive, comes in at the southeast corner of the property. This just local history, this particular easement has been a sore point between the Bagley clan and the Hemphill clan since before time. And Hemphill insisting that he had the easement, and Bagley insisting that he doesn't. Brian Webster thinks there is, and Mike Bagley thinks there's not. I haven't researched this. I don't have a legal position or opinion on the quality of the easement. However, the initial discussions were Mike Bagley owns a couple pieces of property, it's now in your packet, that adjoins the Sims property at the southwest corner, roughly, of the property. And what Mike Bagley wanted, he's trying to develop those and needs a little more space to make it work the way he wants. And the initial proposal was that he would trade the easement for a similar width strip off of the Sims property. That doesn't quite get the job done. There's another little piece that a portion of would help him do what he wants to do, and it's a separate PIN number on the maps that was given to you, 7327 on the maps. The tax maps are delivered, and we can't sell that to him, but the town at any point, if you recall, there was another piece of property far away from this we obviously couldn't utilize, no access to it, isolated, it was owned by Sims or by Mary, that we said we'll never want that. That reverted back to the estate. The estate sold it. The proposition is that the town, literally say we don't want that lot either, that 7327, reverts back to the estate. They will sell to Bagley for money to generate money for the estate. The reason the estate's sort of interested in this is Mary died with a lot less money than she thought she might have when she died. And so there are other things that aren't happening that Mary wanted to happen, and this might help a little of that. So what is proposed, and again, this is proposed, tossed out there, is that the Bagley grant that easement that allows us to come off of Sunset Drive. The town allows, I guess, the 20-foot strip running parallel to his property be conveyed to Bagley. We renounce our interest in that PIN number 7327, which the estate would sell. Looking at this, we took a little hike. I met with the mayor and the town manager and Bryant Webster, who took us on the tour of the property. Where that easement that comes up from Sunset, it ends at a gate right at the edge of the Sims property. You can literally open up the door, and there hadn't been a car parked in the way, driven down that and on Sunset Drive the day we were up there. We walked down onto the piece that is proposed that we just say we don't want, so it goes back to the state and they can sell. And it's probably about 1.5 acres. It's a low-lying piece. It's not an ugly piece. It's tucked right up against the interstate. It's a noisy piece. That, don't know if that adds or detracts a lot from what we could do with the park. But I was just asked to come to this board, say, is there any interest in pursuing that in any fashion? If the board tells me no, it's the end of conversation. If you want to look into it farther, or if you're willing to do it, let me know that. The importance to me is, back on the legal end, this wasn't left to the town to do with as it pleases, so which would make it much nicer. If the mayor had left it to us and say it'd be really nice if you did a park, but we don't care what you do, we could probably play this to our advantage a whole lot better. But the way it is, we really can't practically do that. One other loose piece on this, and the mayor brought this up, does that piece that they're proposing that we relinquish, it puts us another couple hundred feet farther west on that tract of land. Is it, in the future, would it ever be possible or practical or even worth considering tying that to our greenway system? At some point, would there be a way to walk from our greenway system to the park? Just using the measuring device or tool on the county's GIS, from the western end of that little piece to the connection to the greenway, which has to be on this side of the interstate, of course, on the same side, is we right at Highway 9, and that's 2,150 feet. Considering the scope of our greenway system right now, that plans, that's really not very far, but it's nothing that's in our plans, it's nothing that's considered, and we would either have to acquire the right to cross private properties for that distance or right to run a greenway within the interstate highway right of way. But I thought you might want to know that distance of practicality. If that is an interest in something retained, there's nothing in this that is part of the deal, if a deal is made, of saying to Bagley, if he buys this in the county, or buys it from the state, not the county, that we be given an easement over that for purposes of building a greenway that would reach the property we do retain for the park someday in the future. Might be 2 generations away, but that's a possibility. Can I encourage it or discourage? I don't have a clue one way or the other. There is the advantage, and the box culvert, as the mayor well knows, is one lane. And we do have the railroad crossing with no crossing bars. There's no safety devices there at all that we would be feeding the public park from. And that's the one thing that possibly makes access from Sunset, not crossing railroad track, not trapping traffic in a one-way culvert, as having that access, or second access into the Sims property.
Ron, if you went from Sunset, I mean, is there, did you say, is this where the gate is that you said you could open it?
If you come up Sunset and turn off on this little easement that runs up to the Sims property, there is a road in place there, mostly driveway, but it goes up, and there's a gate on the roadway there. I used to, in fact, when I was getting along with Bagley's and Hemphills, we used to move horses by riding up that road. As the mayor can attest, we get up there with a chainsaw in a few minutes, and you could drive through there right now. Wouldn't recommend it for the family sedan, but I think Don's truck would make it.
Yeah.
And I just need direction. This board can say they'd like to study it further. We'd like to do it. We don't even want to consider it. I need just some direction to go back so we can know which way this talk should go.
Well, the only thing I would offer is I don't think I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight unless the rest of the board wants to, and that would be their call. But for me, I do need to study it a little bit more, and this is my concern, and Michael would be happy to tell him this, and that is I think I want to make sure that we're not doing something that would enrich one of our citizens that we just wouldn't do for another. And that, we were, as you mentioned, the Hemphills gave the property to the town for the use of the park. And so, I kind of have to think through just, there's nothing inappropriate about it, but it's just, are we doing something for one that we could not do for another or would not do for another? And that kind of, I just have to think about that a little bit.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So I could make a motion to table that. Would that be appropriate?
There's no motion before you, no action has to be taken tonight. It's mostly just providing the information, give me some direction. Right. But if it's the consensus of the board that they needed a month at least to look at this and consider all the angles, at least they give me some direction. I can go back to them and tell them this board has all the information now and is considering it.
Okay.
I think that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
All righty. Next is public hearing for the close of the remainder of unopened platted portion of First Street. Jessica?
Yes, so you may remember a couple of months ago this board closed the balance of First Street, and this is just a small piece that remains to be closed. We had a learning curve on this application where we needed to sync up the applications made by the applicant as well as the planning board. And we have done that from this process, as you saw with the Campbell Street call for us. But this is the remaining piece. It's about 75 feet long. It's landlocked. That is petitioned to be closed. It's at the unopened right-of-way on First Street. I believe you have a map.
And before anybody thinks they're downtown, this is actually a non-existent street.
This is right. These are trees. Yes.
And Ron, when we, remind me, I think I have to ask this every time we do this, but we retain easements for utilities and so forth?
Only if there are already utilities there.
Okay.
The process by which, if you had something and the recommendations come forth, this is not one of those. But if you're going to close the street, but you do want to reserve the right to go back into the utilities, and they're not already there, there's another process. It adds about another month to the process if you want to reserve easements. Should you get one where now that they send this out to all the departments and say, what are we losing? We close this. water department comes back and says, without this, we need to retain a right to run water lines through here. Need to come to me. There's another step in the process to do that, to reserve easements where none exist now.
Well, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board, but it kind of makes sense for me that we would just start. Why would we not just do that? If it adds another month to it, let's just make that part of our process. If we're going to close something, if there's utility line, if there's there, fine. But if they're not there, we just, as a matter of process, add that to our procedure for street closure.
That may be unnecessary for some of it, but we might want to add. I don't think we have to add. I think it's already there. Each of the departments are fire department. Will we ever need this for fire access? Jamie, and will we ever need this for water line? I think the steps are already in place to ensure that we don't close something where it appears we may need the access. I don't know if you want to add that extra layer of procedure at this point. It's a kind of cumbersome animal that you have to give notices and a bunch of steps. I don't have them all memorized. It's a fairly cumbersome process, and I think the planning folks have accounted for that possibility by now approaching all the departments before they recommend that you close the street.
And Mr. Harris, what I think you might be remembering is that on the earlier balance of this, the property owners came to an agreement to record a utility easement for some of the neighbors in the future should they need it. There were no utilities there, but that was an accommodation the applicant made.
So in this particular case, we have it. We have an easement anyway. They have an easement. Not the public though. Not the town.
Right, the adjoining property owners, should they need to put in a driveway or run a line of some sort, they have access.
And what sort of is there a notice process that you think handles that well? Because I recall something about this discussion, but not completely.
It's the statutes were kind of blurry for a while. They just simply said that you reserve an easement, and then of course somebody brought up the fact, how do you reserve an easement? And because platted rights of way are access only, they are not platted for utilities, and so it is an extra step to reserve an easement. If the utility lines are in the ground, then there's an easement. It might be prescriptive, but it's there, and we're reserving the right to retain those. If there's nothing, it's a little bit of a cumbersome process on purpose, because we don't own that strip of land. We're simply saying by closing a street, we're saying that recording of the plat was an offer to the public, and then the town stands in the shoes of the public and say, okay, we accept that offer. We're going to build a road. It's a little bit much when the town says we're turning down this offer for an easement for access, but we're taking an easement for utilities that we didn't have a minute ago. And that's why that process is fairly cumbersome once you do decide to take those steps, and why I'm recommending not doing it for every process. Like I said, I think the planning folks have done a pretty good job of checking off everybody that might think they might want to use it. Now this particular piece, as Jessica pointed out, is a little square in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
So it doesn't come or go from anywhere.
Any other questions? Okay, I need a motion to open the public hearing for Resolution R19-06.
So moved.
All right. Any citizen comments? Any more questions by the board? Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion to approve R19-06 for the street closure.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. All right, Jessica, you're up again. Public hearing for text amendments to the definition section of bed and breakfast homes and inns.
Yes. This was requested by Teresa Fuller, who owns the Arbor House, which is a beautiful bed and breakfast on Lake Tomahawk. The only changes to the definitions are the number of rooms in each definition And so the previous number was for a bread and breakfast home, they had 1 to 4 rooms. They now have up to 6 rooms. And a bed and breakfast inn had 5 to 12, and now it has 7 to 12. Get my gaps right. And Ron, would you prefer that I read the full definitions, or because there are slight differences in those animals, but the numbers are
It might be
the
interesting
same.
to the board, but I will toss in that in the North Carolina general statutes, they define bed and breakfast home differently from bed and breakfast inn, and their numbers are bigger for bed and breakfast home. But we're not locked into those because those statutes actually are health inspection statutes and don't stick us with their definitions. And so knowing how we define them is important, and how the state defines them is insignificant in this particular case.
They will be inspected by the state by their definitions, and we are more interested in potential uses and compatibility. Okay, so the definition for a bed and breakfast home is a private owner-occupied residence, now with no more than 6 guest rooms, where overnight accommodations and a morning meal are provided to transient guests for compensation, where the bed and breakfast use is subordinate and incidental to the main residential use of the building. The homeowner shall reside on site, and employment shall not exceed the equivalent of 1 full-time employee in addition to the owner. And then, as you might expect in a bed and breakfast inn, it's slightly expanded to a private home owner-occupied business with at least 7 but no more than 12 guest rooms, where overnight accommodations and a morning meal are provided to transients for compensation, where the bed and breakfast inn is operated primarily as a business. The owner shall reside on site, and employment shall not exceed the equivalent of 3 full-time employees in addition to the owner.
Motion to open the public hearing on 19-6.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Discussions, questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, you're here.
I'm here. This has been a very interesting conversation. I am going to say I totally agree with Ron. Break somebody's pointer here. On the definition, the 4 rooms were limited based upon taxation rules back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that's why the 4 rooms for bed and breakfast. Right now I run my bed and breakfast as 5, but I legally am complying by using the 5th as a short-term rental, if that's what I have to do to comply. I'm probably the only B&B bed and breakfast in my name here in Black Mountain. All of the other places have the word inn. We are regulated exactly the same way. The state allows us to provide more than just breakfast, so that is something that I feel that's somewhat unfair. There's 2 sections in the ordinance actually that should be changed, and they should be changed accordingly. So the one that is mentioned in this is section 1.2.3 that's underneath the structure and administration. The one that I had brought up to requesting the change was section 5.5.1, and they are worded slightly different. I also am a bit concerned about saying that the owner is residing, because one section says residing manager, and one is residing, the owner is residing. I do every once in a while take vacation, believe it or not, and we'll have a relief innkeeper, and that's something that is very well known in our area. So I want to make sure that it's not worded to the point where the owner is always having to be the one to be on site. That's a big concern to me when we're actually changing definitions. So I want to make sure that we are not trying to limit me further than less. I was actually just asking for 1 more room, and since I'm the only B&B in Black Mountain, the other ones we operate the same. I have to get food certification. I have to have fire. The fire department comes and audits me. The health department audits me. I have 100%, But I just want to make sure that you don't penalize me by asking for this change, and instead of saying that the owner has to be on premise during the time that people are always there. It is my primary residence.
I don't
and that is
believe
part
it
of the
reads
law.
that way. It just says that it is your residence as you reside there. It doesn't say you have to be present every moment of the day.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're making sure that.
As long as you live there.
Asheville has an ordinance or a provision for people to rent space in their homes called a homestay. And you bodily do have to be there when your guests are there. This ordinance doesn't say there, it just says it's your residence. I don't think we're hamstringing it here.
Okay. Just want to make sure of that in that wording because it's different in both places. Thank you.
All right. Any questions from Jess? Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? 5-0. All right.
You have a statement of consistency.
Yes, sir. We need a motion to adopt the statement of consistency.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion to approve ordinance 019-06 as presented or amended. And I did not hear any amendments.
Approve it. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Unless I'm missing something, we're going to communications from staff. Ron?
I'm going to speak something that's not necessarily town business, but I'm exercising my bragging rights, and Carlos knows what I'm about to say. Some of you were here and dealt, well, my paralegal Anna Stearns worked with me for 15 years. Some of you know her background. Some of you know that Anna came from a start in life that you would have just written her off. This board is familiar with her, whereas for a while she came in and sat and took minutes. She answered those questions for you for the town when I wasn't around, probably practicing law without a license. Almost. Anna worked her way through undergraduate school while she was working for me full time. She got into Campbell Law School with a scholarship. She worked full time going to law school. She was Brian Turner's legislative assistant. She so impressed Brian Turner that when she left, he funded a scholarship in her name at Campbell Law. Anna had a child, her younger son, still in school in Raleigh, in the high school there, a good high school, doing well. She did not want to leave until he finished school. So she found a job just to make do. She got a job clerking for Justice Beasley. And so for a few months, she was Justice Beasley's clerk. And some of you know Justice Beasley just became Chief Justice. That changed everything. Anna went from being the clerk to what we thought was going to be associate counsel. And then once the Chief Justice took her new seat and found what her job entailed, she made Anna she is now Chief of Staff and General Counsel to the Chief Justice of the State of North Carolina Supreme Court. Not bad for a kid just 10 months out of law school.
Amen.
But I wanted to exercise her bragging rights. You guys got to work with her. I got the pleasure of working with her for 15 years, and she has done good.
Amen.
I'll be brief. 4 quick things. So I have hired a new fire chief who will start on May the 9th. Scotty Harris is his name. So we're going to have some, we'll have a little welcome reception for him probably before is that the agenda or the meet? Before the agenda meeting on May 9th. Probably around 4 o'clock is what we're planning. There's our recreation department. Their sponsor packet is available on our website. You'll take a look at that. Tell folks that's our sponsorship packet. It's on our website. Town offices will be closed on Friday, April 19th for Good Friday. And reminder of your budget workshop on Thursday, April 25th at 8:30 in the morning. And that's it.
Is there going to be an Easter egg hunt this year?
I'm not sure. Easter egg hunt?
No, we ever have one.
In discussion from the board. All right, I just want to mention, we're getting ready, we're going in our budget. And you've heard a lot of requests, and we've got pickleball folks that need pickleball, we've got folks that need tennis courts, we've got requests for roads and more paving, and I can assure you one thing, this town board is gonna look at it and weigh everything that they can, as they always do. But I can assure you right now, you're not going to get everybody's not going to get everything they want. And we are going to do the best we can. We may have to be doing some capital projects, just like we did with the fire truck. We bought over a $500,000 fire truck, putting the money aside for years, and we just do it the slow, committed way of putting money aside, and we can't spend it except for this particular item. There's just a lot of expectations from folks who live in this town, and we represent you guys to try to get everything accomplished that we can. But come to the budget meetings. Continue to stay in contact with your aldermen, because they're the ones who make the decisions. But it's not all going to happen. And work with them, because it can all happen in time. With that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?